with our lovely, lovely energies about, I'm deciding to mix it up today. So 5D mystics and functional adults, we get to talk about the human stuff, but the difference between those who don't do the human stuff. So when you look up Kundalini awakening or spiritual awakening, I was watching a video, it was explaining these differences between them. When you look at 5th dimension descriptions, 10th dimension descriptions, so the individuals who talk to you with the energetic stuff in the forefront, you don't really have a way to make human sense of it. So for me, since I began everything ascension related, it's always made sense because I apply day-to-day stuff to it. And what helped me to be able and clearly note that missing gap was when I began to get trauma informed, because of learning about how unresolved trauma comes up. And it wasn't because of learning how it's stored and how the brain works in and of itself. It was because I had already seen year after year after year, I call them the 4D collective, because they stay within the bandwidth of only spiritual and or spirituality. So they don't move into 5D, because if you move into 5D, I'm going to assume you know how to use your left and right, and then to explain concepts to people in a way that helps them to put it into practice. A lifestyle, obviously, is what I get to see. So when I see people talking to you about how to use certain types of exercises, or they're coaching you to access those dimensions, the focus is not you embodying your pure state of consciousness. It's you navigating life from the externalization of this idea of you being a 10th dimension or 5th dimension. So you're using a word to actually say, this is how I'm living life, versus, oh, I'm embodying and bringing forth, being able to embody and bring forth. So here's where, when they describe the 3rd dimension, they talk about it being in our left mode of the brain. And the 5th or beyond is where the right mode of our brain is connected to pure consciousness. So these areas are great to give people the gist of, but when you're not looking at it with the knowingness that your 3-year-old, your implicit memory comes along. And so, as I was saying, the trauma memory, let me go back to what I wanted to bring together. And that would be where I was hearing again and again and again the same messages, DNA upgrades, energy, light work, light this, light that. Very exciting. I'm still very excited. We're all light workers, but there's a difference between the people who live in the 4D plane and they continue again to navigate, like when they're talking about conspiracies or spiritual warfare, or they're just talking about things in such an abstract way that's like, okay, are you, they serve a purpose. Let's put that to the side. Like we all do. We all serve a purpose to each other, because at the end of the day, if you do look online, there's a lot of chit chat to support people, self-help. The online world has helped us to come together. Some people don't like it. They miss the old days. The old days still are here. If you go to school, you're going to have a structured approach. And academically, I love academia. We have researchers. That's where our 5D educators are at. They're amazing. They give you the data. 4D give you story with data. Now, if you're a leader of yourself, you don't want the story. You're going to notice the story and you're going to be like, I want the data. If you want the story, that's because an adaptive child leads with a story, and their inner child is not seen. So your 3-year-old heart is not seen by you with your left and right brain, because you're not actually harnessing the awareness of what am I doing here and why am I here, with an emotional awareness. It's not about not seeking. We all seek information. So I remember when I began having certain things take place, it reassured me to see all of those explanations on spirituality awakening, Kundalini awakening, guru, no guru. All of these areas give reassurance for symptoms and aspects that we do experience. However, what I loved learning even more than anything was when I got my course with Peter Levine, and he was talking about trauma memory, and Bessel van der Kolk talks about that too, and how it's stored in the muscles and bones and tissue, and when it's coming and unfolding, which once you move one piece, the rest unfolds. So this is where it's important to have a good psych educational background, but also to understand that there are therapists for reasons. Now here's that other part where I'm going to keep on doing this and that. I watched recently Patrick Tiahan. He's a healed childhood trauma survivor, continues to heal, and a therapist. And he had a video on the 6 pitfalls of therapy or something like that. And the first one he talks about is when people gain awareness and they like completely know everything about every little inch of diagnoses, trauma. They become experts and they think that that's going to be good enough. And here's where he shares, obviously, the importance and value of therapy. And that's the part of where I agree. What I also know, though, because I have an ego self like you do, and he also added another one of those pitfalls is that people will tend to, even though in his case he's talking about those who have childhood trauma, they're highly independent. So they have been used to doing everything on their own. So that's where it's a different way to feel when you are forced to do things on your own since a very young age versus just taking it upon yourself to be able and want to learn. The energy is different. Person who has had to depend on themselves is going to be rigid with that information. So they're going to keep moving forward, but they're going to have a whole different approach to that journey versus another person who's very soft and curious. Okay, so if you're curious and soft and you're afraid, you're going to be okay with looking up information, but you're also going to be okay with not using that information. You don't feel that you have to listen to anybody. You're not triggered by it either. So there's so many different areas that you'll notice. A person who gets rigid in a way of, I know everything and is not open to new, is a person who's not expanding their consciousness. And here's why the therapy part is important, or at least the awareness, that awareness alone and self-help books alone and anything alone might not be enough, because when you're projecting your potentially toxic family member, parents, or your trauma, family, unfinished business, to be able to be aware of it is one, then to be able and figure out, okay, how do I process these emotions? Because the emotions need to be processed. And that's the part, as he points out, it means grieving, like crying, getting angry, and having a safe space to do that, which is where the therapists come into the mix, or at the very least somebody who's trauma-informed enough to guide you and support you and create awareness, but also allow you to understand this isn't a quick fix. There ain't no fix. You're not broken, by the way. You have charges. Okay, so awareness is only one step to any journey. Awareness of the thoughts and emotions are important. And that's why your 3-year-old is where we want to hone in right now, because the implicit memory will keep coming up. So when you're triggered, it's about being able to not feel ashamed. Oh, I wasn't successful. Oh, I did it again. Oh, I'll never, to not be in that shame cycle, inner critic, outer critic. To be aware, oh, I'm in my shame cycle. I'm repeating my pattern right now. I'm doing I'm going to crap on myself bit versus understanding I was just triggered, or that pattern came up, or whatever it is, the flashback. This is the part of self-compassion. Learning to be compassionate with yourself. And this is one of the most challenging things that any person who's not ready to welcome their inner child, because you will have felt helpless. There's a difference with a heart that gets to be healed by the owner of the heart. And so you with an inner child versus one who's always whole. I've never had to heal my heart personally. I'm good with my imperfections and flaws, and I'm sure other people can jump on in eventually to share that. So for me, it's very different. I'm always compassionate. And when I see people not being compassionate, like, why aren't you being compassionate towards yourself? The 4D Collective talks to you about the expansion of consciousness through spirituality concepts. You don't actually pick up on the fact that if trauma memory, which not if, it comes up, stuff comes up, you handling it is you being able to see, wait a minute, I am a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old. Myself accompanies me in these charges. I'm not a fixed piece of energy. And I say piece of energy because all of the implicit memory, it's from the body. There are sensations. That's why it's your left and right mode. So integration of the brain, like Daniel Siegel teaches and shares, it's like a muscle. You're going to have to put into practice to get into the infinite possibility realm. Is challenging for those who have childhood trauma, because the unknown in that right brain is scary. What I know I can control, and control is important in a household where you're the one who depends on yourself. So tune in for more. Stay compassionate, loving, and kind to each other. Remember, we don't know what each other's bodies has been through.